So that's that done. Started that, and then I'm gonna start sharing. Okay, so let's have a look. So this week, as I said, we are going to be talking about mindful movement in session 3. And it's really very much about the fact that our body is present in the here and now, and it, is your mind. Because very often your body is here in the room, but your mind might be revisiting the past or going to the future. And I absolutely love how Lao Tzu describes this sort of like, is your mind here in the present? Because he says, if you feel, if you're feeling sort of sadness and worry, then you're living in the past. If you're feeling anxious, then your mind is in the future. And if you're feeling good, you're usually in the present moment. So it's quite a good way to remembering in terms of emotions. We'll explore emotions, how that links to, the feelings will link to where we are in terms of past and present, future. So like we've done last week, I want us to review week 2 and for you guys to share with me how it went. So I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see you, and I'd love to hear how you all got on this week. Is there anything you want to share in particular, things that you found challenging or you've enjoyed, or whatever?
I found this week really challenging, as I put in my journal to you. I thought, I'll be able to do mindful breathing because I can do mindful listening, it's fine. But for me, I really struggled, and I felt like, because I was concentrating on the breath, and then I suddenly realized that I'd been thinking about something else for the last 2 minutes without even knowing that I had. And I was like, oh God, doing that. And yeah, I don't know. I found it a bit more of a challenge for me. And yeah, and I just had I had a great Wednesday, fantastic Thursday. And then since then, I've just felt really rock bottom. So I don't know, but I feel better this afternoon, so I'm back up again, so that's good. But
okay, and like I said,
emotions.
Yes, and as I said in your journaling, and this is worth sort of mentioning for everybody, we life is not, you remember those waves and things. Life is not about just being constantly happy, and we all experience the ups and downs, and the difficulty, and this is very much what happens with a lot of my students when I talk to them, and I drew that graph that I shared with you, is that when we hit that rock bottom, when we feel not so good, we look around. So I use the analogy of, I don't know if I've shared that with you, but the analogy of life. So life being like surfing. So when you surf, you're on top of the wave, but actually you may be on top of the wave for like 90 seconds or, like 2-3 minutes. And then some of the other time you'll be under the water, under the wave, literally under the water, holding your breath, okay? And if you use that analogy as a surfer, you're having a day where you've got a bit of an off day and you're not feeling too good, and you look around you and you just imagine that all the others are like surfing on the wave and they seem really happy. The problem with that, with comparing yourself with the other surfers around you, is that you don't know where they were 5 minutes prior or 10 minutes prior. And it looks like they're happily surfing on top of that wave. But to be a surfer, and in fact, a good surfer will tell you they need to have learnt all of those things that require that under the wave, under the water, holding your breath to be a great surfer. And it's all part of the package and all part of life. And so, one of the things that I want to like really anchor and for you to remember is that the practices I'm teaching you, they won't take away the challenges that present themselves in your life. That's impossible. I wish I had that magic wand, Although we had a conversation with Louise recently, and we were saying it probably would be a bit dull if things were just completely great all the time, and you had no challenges. So, you know, fantastic that you're noticing. So when you do the practice, so first of all, I would say, if you're finding the breathing meditation more challenging than the listening meditation, it may be that actually practicing the breathing meditation is really a good idea. So, you know, I said to you, the mindful listening is my least favorite, but sometimes I really force myself to do it because I know that it's also my least favorite skill, I guess. So it's like, you know, sometimes the mindful, it might just be that the mindful breathing requires you to be far more, you know, more of you, and so therefore it's more demanding and more challenging.
Yeah, well, you know me, I like to run 100 miles an hour and do 10 things at once, so having to really concentrate and sit still on basically nothing is really a challenge for me, because I think, oh no, I've got so much more I could do with myself. But like you said, it's letting go of that and just, it's only 10 minutes.
Yes. And it's also a construct.
Yeah.
Construct that we have been taught and conditioned by our society, that actually we constantly need to keep going on the hamster wheel and keep going and keep going. And actually our society suggests that doing nothing is idle, you know, it's being lazy and idle, when really doing nothing and doing the practice that you're doing, giving yourself something, you know, 10 minutes is actually a gift. It's what will have a far more of a positive impact. So, and the other thing I want to say is start small. So really tiny habits. It's better to start, you know. So if you find difficult to, and this is true for all of you, if you find difficult to sort of introduce the regular practice, say to yourself, I will meditate when, you know, like for 2 minutes when I've brushed my teeth, okay? So you just sort of set something and you just sort of like set it, and you just give yourself a really, really small little thing. I will when. So, you know, you can, so like I'll give you an example in terms of fitness, not meditation, because that's now part of my regular practice, but I want to get fitter, and actually one of the things I'm trying to do is do more like stomach exercise. So I was like, right, I'm gonna make my coffee, and whilst I'm doing that, I'm gonna do some stomach exercises. And I did that for 2 minutes, and it's just like just 2 minutes, but just sort of like starting really small and just and just introducing regularly. So you introduce a small practice, so tiny habits. So it doesn't have to, you know, if you feel that 10 minutes is too much because you feel you've got too much, then actually just say to yourself, I'll do it for 2 minutes. Chances are that you'll want to do it a little bit longer, because once you're sat, you'll go, right, okay, that's it. You know, I said to myself, I'll do 5 sort of sit-ups for my stomach, and in fact I just ended up doing 12 because I was like, right, okay, I can do that. So once you start, it's like, is that momentum, isn't it? Is that snowball, and then as you start pushing it downhill, initially it might just be difficult, but then you'll suddenly catch momentum, and then, you know, it just happen.
Perfect.
Yeah, but you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Rolling that roller coaster.
Yes. And that is true of everybody. Please be kind to yourselves. We are all absolutely, you know, there's no way we would say any of the things we say to ourselves to anybody. We wouldn't say that to our kids. We wouldn't say that to our loved ones, to our best friends. So if you hear anything that, you know, if you hear your inner chatter or inner critic, challenge it. That's also really important. Anybody else? sort of like want to share their week, their experience.
Plan makes you feel any better. I've had that sort of week as well, and I think it's just about juggling so much. As you know, I get up really early and do yoga, and this week I've just not been able to settle into it, and it's because I can think of all the other things I could and should be doing. So if it's any consolation, I've had, and I'm a really, really regular yoga practitioner, but not this week, I'm afraid. Just struggling to do it, really. And I think it's because we've got so many other things. You know, this homeschooling lark, it's overrated, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I was the same. Really struggled. And it's that self-love as well, like really, you know, giving that time to yourself. I was rebellious.
Yeah, exactly. It's what I found it hard to like put it that as a routine, really. So really like take the time for yourself to do it, and as a routine. So that I found, because it's not something I'm used to do, so I found it hard to take like even 5 minutes, but take even this 5 minutes, just add them in my day, and start a routine with that.
Yeah, and I think what you will also find is that so your ego, which identifies with all of the different identities and hats you carry. So, you know, I'm a mom, I'm a, you know, put the I am next to it. Okay, so you know, those of you who are mums will be, I'm a mum, I'm a wife, you know, if you've got a partner, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter, you know. So like for me this morning, my mum was trying to ring me on WhatsApp whilst I was trying to get ready, and it's just like, just like getting really annoyed. And yet, you know, I haven't spoken to my parents for like 10 days and they're in France, and I was just like, why am I getting so annoyed with them? If anything happens to them, you know, and I don't pick up this phone, I'll really, really regret it not speaking to them. And so what you have to pay really attention to, and this is not something we're used to, is that all the identities we give ourselves and the priority we give to all those different I ams, and how sometimes those I ams may conflict with one another. So like for me, sometimes I struggle with that. I'm a I'm a language director, and then I'm a mum, because sometimes that comes into my life and sort of, you know, takes over my time with the boys. And the difficulty is that with all these identities we have given ourselves, that sort of the ego knows that its days are numbered, so it will actually do absolutely everything to prevent you from looking at that. And one of those things is like, oh well, there's more important things than this. So what you are describing, the struggle to engage with the difficulties, you know, this is completely and utterly normal. And in fact, it's sort of, it happens with any new thing that you would try and implement. So, you know, people who want to start introducing more fitness in their life, people who want to like quit smoking, drinking, you know, like all sorts of new things, introducing a new practice is always a challenge. And so the easier way is to just return to what the norm, to what we know, what feels comfortable. So what you're experiencing is just stepping out of your comfort zone and experiencing the challenges. And once you go past those challenges, then, you know, you then start, it's sort of like, you know, then start expanding the zone and expanding. But it does require effort, and it does require us to take the step. And I would say, you know, because it's non-judgmental awareness of the present moment, whatever happens, if you don't practice one day, don't practice. If you don't practice, you know, 2 days, don't practice. But then if you get to 3 days and you haven't practiced, then ask yourself, okay, what's preventing me from not doing this? What is it that I'm believing, or what's going on? And reflect on the times when you practice. could you see the benefits? Could you see the advantages? Because let's face it, as human beings, we quite like things that work, and we're quite lazy, so we want things that work quickly and easily and effortlessly. All of us, that's how we're wired. So the only way you can win that game of, you know, okay, I'll practice, is by demonstrating to yourself that it's having benefits. So noticing, oh, okay, today I was more aware of this, or, you know, I was less stressed about that, or, you know, I was aware of some of my thoughts or some of my emotions. Okay, but
which is why the journaling is really good, because then you have to like think about it, and then I have to write it down. Like yesterday I had to write to you and I was feeling really horrible, but I had to write it all down. But but then that's then recognizing it, which helped me go, all right. And then this morning I thought, I don't want to be that person today, because that wasn't a nice person who was screaming and shouting, because it brought it forward for me to have to think. So just saying about
no, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be in the format, you know, that I shared with you, as in like the, you know, for some people that online diary works. For me, it really works. That's how it enables me to really highlight the bits where, you know, there may be a habit that I'm on a change, or things that are just cropping up that are really interesting. But yeah, reflect and yeah, again, you know, be kind to yourselves, be gentle on on yourselves. If you know there's days where you don't feel like doing it, then it's non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. It doesn't, you know, we don't have to beat ourselves up because we haven't done it. One day I just didn't feel like doing my normal meditation, so I didn't do it. But in the evening, I felt not quite right. You know, I don't know if you feel a bit like that, Carla, because you haven't done your yoga, but it's almost like there's that muscle memory and your body remembers. And it's like, it felt to me a little bit weird. It's like, I haven't done something and I don't know what it is. And then I was like, no, it's my meditation this morning. So
that's exactly right. There is definitely something missing for me. And if this morning I did start my practice, but I was too distracted, so I stopped. But on the days I don't practice in the morning, I don't know if you're familiar with Yoga Nidra, but I do that at the bedtime. And so I try not to miss a day altogether. But you're right, Fabienne, there was something missing in my morning this morning.
Yes, and it's because we're going to talk about the body and the cells and stuff, but I just so feel that it's almost like your cells are like, hey, what's going on? You know, it's like my body was just going, hang on, not quite right. This was, so I had to literally do what I normally do in the morning to be able to just relax. So the awareness is really important. Anybody else want to share?
I was just thinking that's quite interesting, because we're all struggling to create the habit, but then once you've created the habit, you miss the habit. So it's kind of it will embed itself, I guess, and it becomes part of our everyday. It's a bit like I try to do exercise in the morning, and if I don't, then I feel pretty rubbish by the afternoon. So yeah, and I guess I'm trying to do the same thing with this, but not finding the slot in my day. But I think what I've realized is I need to connect it with something. So what I'm going to try, because I've been doing it all different times of the day, just trying to see where it sits best, or some days not doing it at all. And I thought this morning that actually there's the point when before I sit down to start working, that is kind of a real transition from doing some stuff around the house, sorting the kids out, and then if I'm about to sit down and do some work, then spend 10 minutes there and say, right, okay, before you get into that, 10 minutes now, because that's kind of a transition, and there's a point when I'll hopefully remember as my intention. We'll see. Try, that's my objective next week.
Have a little post-it on your computer, so when you turn your computer on the screen, all you can see is meditate, and then you go, oh, okay.
Yes.
That's the plan.
If not, switch off and come back in 10 minutes. Yes, and it's really important. You're right. It's a really fair and important point, Louise, about the finding what works for you as an individual, and sort of trying out what you're trying out, like doing different times, because we're all really different, and for some people it works in the morning, for some people it's better in the evening. You could do both, or you might want to do it throughout the day. So it's not so much about finding a one size that fits all. It's very much like your practice and what works for you, so that gives you the best chances to embed it. And I would really,
because I try doing it when I get into bed. I thought that would be quite a good idea, because then I kind of relax and go to sleep. But the problem is I've got my timer on for 10 minutes and it wakes me up, and then I can't go back to sleep again. So I've decided that's not the time for me. Yeah.
Perfect. And that's like good awareness. It's sort of teaching you when it doesn't work, which is great. And just finding out when works for you. And it is very much about start tiny little habits, that are so easy that you can't fail. Because once you start with small habits, tiny habits, like 2 minutes, and you just do that, and if you want to increase it, then you might want to do like 30 seconds, and then the next day you do 1 minute, and then the next day you do 1.5 minutes. And actually use those little habits that just that is that neural pathway, and then it just, okay, well, that's what I do. That's how we learned as children to brush our teeth, to wash and dress, and things that mean that we wouldn't go, most of us wouldn't go to work. I mean, obviously now with Zoom you can do calls with your slippers, but it's otherwise you wouldn't go to the office with your slippers on. And that's because we were taught by our parents, and by that you just put your socks on and your shoes and you go out in winter, for example. So it's like finding that bit, that repetition, and tiny, effortless, so it's easier. We don't want to be struggling, because if we struggle, that's not mindfulness, that's not non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. So it's really important. Anybody else?
I found useful the notification practice, to do a minute or so of breathing before answering the phone, because I tried meditating the first evening, and I noticed that a lot of, as much as I was trying to be peaceful and accept all the thoughts, the more I was accepting, the more thoughts were creeping in, and I felt like I failed at meditation because I felt like I was too into my head. So then getting into that habit of having a minute of just breathing before answering every notification. And I use my work for phone, so it beeps a lot. And then I did get to a point where I almost answered it automatically, and then I was like, oh no, I need to breathe. So that worked for me very well to set that little reminder that is like breathe. So that worked for me very well.
Yeah. Cool. Amazing. Well done. Yes. So it's sort of, it tricks like that, that's sort of really helpful, and that works. It's just finding what works for us. Wonderful. So I'm gonna start sharing again, and we're gonna go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So, what I want to talk about before I teach you the two meditations around movement is I want to talk about the cells in our body. So do any of you know how many cells we have in our body in total?
Trillions?
Yeah, trillions. Do you know how many trillions?
8. I guess 8. I don't know why I'm thinking 8. More.
Mm-hmm. So we have, and I've put that picture there because I think it describes very well those what the different cells are. On average, because it's not the same for every single human being, so we all have different numbers of cells depending on who we are and our body shape, but about 37 trillion cells. So massive, massive amount of cells. And these cells, how many do you think you control? As in consciously control?
Half?
You don't control very many, okay? In fact, a lot of the things in our body is linked to our autonomous nervous system. So, for example, you don't regulate your own heartbeat, you don't regulate your digestion, sort of consciously regulate. Obviously, it's being regulated by your autonomous nervous system. But, you know, your heart, your blood flow, what's going on with your brain, your liver, your kidneys, you know, all to do with your ovulation, and for men with sperm, your pancreas, your muscle, all of those things. An awful lot of the cells in our body we absolutely don't consciously control. There is only one bit in our body that we control, which is one main organ that we can control consciously, and that's our lungs, the breathing. All the others we can't control consciously, even if we wanted to. Okay, so your lungs are linked to your nervous system, and we'll talk about that in a minute. One of the things I wanted to mention today is something called epigenetics. So have any of you heard about epigenetics? Nina, I can see you nod.
Yeah, I do biology, so I remember that I have been taught about this, but I do not remember any impressive details.
Okay. Anybody else have heard?
The environment can change your genetics.
Yes. So what epigenetics is the fact that we talk a lot about our genetic heritage from our parents and from our grandparents, etc. Okay, so you know, some of the illnesses, for example, may be hereditary. So that's why we say, and that in some families you've got cancers that tend to genetically sort of be passed on. I mean, if you look at other species, birds, for example, will pass genetically some things that they will share to their offsprings, a new danger or things like that. And what they've discovered with a lot of biology and with a lot of science, there's something called epigenetics, so beyond genetics, and it's because the environment actually can change your genes, your DNA. And your environment can have an impact on how your body responds. And I find that super empowering, in the sense that if I change, and this is why I picked this image, if I move from, you know, the smoking to eating really not so great, to not doing as much exercise, and actually choose to have a healthier diet, exercise more, and, you know, practice the mindfulness, through those changes, you can change your gene coding, and you can actually change. So there's loads of research that's being done around, in particular, the influence of foods on our genetic makeup, and how you can reverse effects on like cancer and things like this. So it's really exciting. But the other thing I wanted to mention today, in terms of a little bit of science and extra knowledge, is that, you know, when I showed you that picture about your cells, I talked about the fact that we don't control those cells, and we don't control our the breathings of unless we control it through the mindfulness. But all of the others, our heartbeat, how fast our heart goes, the blood circulation, all of those things, because we've got something called a nervous system, okay, a central nervous system. And our central nervous system will actually decide how we respond to some situations. And there's two key areas of the nervous system. There's what we call the sympathetic nervous system. So I mentioned last week when I was talking about the I showed you the picture of the zebra that was sort of eating after being chased by the lion. So this is very much what happens. So this we have in common with a lot of the animals. It's part of our amygdala brain, and it's the fight flight. So it's all about movement away or movement towards. And if you look here, I don't know if you can see, but it sort of explains to you what happens in terms of what increases. So it increases your blood pressure, your heart rate, and your adrenaline and oxygen in your organs, so you can just fight or run away. And it decreases all these things, so digestion, salivation, all of those things. This is why people who suffer from stress on a regular basis may suffer from IBS, because I always use the analogy, if you're going to be someone's dinner, why digest your own dinner? And that's how our body thinks. If I'm going to be eaten by a lion, why the hell would I spend energy trying to digest my own food? There's no point. So that's why a lot of the, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but when I used to be really stressed, I used to have something similar to IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and a lot of upset stomach because of that. This is just literally the result of that fight and flight. And then the parasympathetic nervous system. So last week I talked to you about the fact that our body is always looking for what we call homeostasis. So our body is always trying to find a balance. It's constantly regulating itself, regulating our heartbeat, sensing and sort of observing the environment, and then deciding how to regulate it. Regulates our the acidity, all of those things without us even being remotely aware. And there's actually two parts to the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system are both what we call melated. So they actually, the way the information circulates is super fast. Okay, but the parasympathetic nervous system is ventral. It's through the front and through the back here. So we've got a 10th nerve, which is really important through the back of the head, and then it just goes back to the front and the back. And this is all linked to what we call so this work is the work by Professor Porges, if you want to go and check him out. And he explains that the ventral vagal is all about social engagement. So it's actually linked to our facial muscles. And we know through, if someone is frowning or someone is smiling, that will have an impact on our sympathetic or our parasympathetic nervous system. So actually a lot of the non-verbal communication, the frowning and all of those things, like babies, for example, will be able to gauge how they need to respond to the person in front of them because of this. So it's just absolutely fascinating research. But the parasympathetic nervous system does absolutely the opposite of what the sympathetic nervous system does. So it's all about immunity, resistance to infection, resetting and recuperation. And it's really important. That's why mindfulness and compassion are a good way to put your body back into that sort of nurturing. And the other one I wanted to mention, because you may have heard the fight, flight, and freeze. Very often people mistake the freeze as being part of the sympathetic nervous system. It's not. It's part of the parasympathetic nervous system, but it's a dorsal system. It's the most ancient. So it's not mediated connection. And in fact, it will kick in every time your body thinks that you're about to die or you're in immediate danger to your life. So this is what makes you faint, pass out, in car accidents, that's like really sort of, that's what happens. That's when the body collapses and you become completely immobile, you can't move. And a good example of that is look at reptiles. So this is part of our old reptilian brain, and reptiles do that. So they fake being dead, and you can see it in tiny little, do you all get, I call them granddads, what are they called? The little things that you find sometimes in your bathroom, what are they called? Jason,
I don't know.
Jason,
Woodlouse?
Yeah, yes, that's it.
Woodlice.
Daddy long legs.
Not daddy long legs.
No, you mean woodlice.
Yeah,
Woodlice.
woodlice. So Jason calls them granddads. I don't know why, but that's what he calls them. So I call them that, but they're like woodlice. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you poke them, they go completely like on themselves. Have you seen that? Well, that is the freeze. So they're literally pretending to, the mouse do it as well. A mouse will do it. So if it gets caught by a cat, it'll pretend to be dead. And the reason for that is because the cat will just get disinterested it won't eat it straight away if it's dead. So actually what they do is they freeze, and what it does is it avoids you suffering if you are going to die because you don't feel the pain, but also it just means that when the cat drops you, you can then quickly leg it somewhere else. So it's a super it's a thing that we have to keep alive, to sort of like help us out of difficult sensations, but also this is what we see in a lot of when you discuss with people who work with people who've experienced very traumatic events. So people who suffer from PTSD very often have issues around this on the freeze side. So I thought it'd be quite useful for you to have a look at that. And if you want to have a look at his work, the guy is called Stephen Porges, Porges. So what I love when I talk about the body is that I love the analogy of the body as a vehicle, okay? So your body is not you. It's a little bit like the car that you drive. It's taking you wherever you go, okay? And I love that because in a way, the fact that the cells, all those trillion cells that have a life of their own, and that can actually go really rogue and develop cancer, for example, is a great example that I'm not in control of those cells, but that they're just a little bit like a vehicle. I can look after them in the same way that I look after my car, and I give my car an MOT and a service. Well, so too can I look after my body and give my body the obviously use this photo for the analogy of giving it the right food and the right care, etc. So for me that works. If it doesn't work for you, just ignore it and leave it. But I love that image. And so what we are going to do for the rest of this session is literally getting to know our bodies. So again, with this photo, remember all different bodies, all different individuals. So it's not about anybody else's body but yours, and getting to know and understand what's going on with your body and how your body reacts to different situations, how your autonomous nervous system triggers the fight, flight, or the soothing system, and all of those things. So what we're going to do is we're going to do, as I said, the two practice, the mindful movements. I'm going to stop sharing. So we're going to do, the first one we're going to do is a mindful body scan. So I'm going to take you through starting with a deep breath. And then I'm literally going to ask you to go through every single part of your body and notice if you feel any tension anywhere, and if you feel any tension, then I'll guide you how you bring in almost like some light into that particular area, and then you take whatever tension is down through your feet and you just let it all go. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing as a first exercise. Does that make sense for everybody? Yeah, cool. Okay, so you know the drill now. What we're going to do is I'd like you to find a comfortable position with your feet flat on the floor. I'd like us to take a deep breath in and out. Remember, I said to you last week, breathing out more extensively triggers our parasympathetic nervous system, the soothing system. So breathing in and out. And so you are bringing yourself into the room you are in, bringing your mind with your body in this room. So feel your body wherever you are. If you are sat on the floor, on a chair, in your bed, wherever you are, it doesn't matter. And so what we are going to do is we're going to give our body a little bit of care and attention, and a little bit of like we would if we were giving our car a bit of a check-in. Checking that everything is okay. And we're going to start with the top of our head. For those of you who do yoga, you might want to link that with the chakras, for example. And linking them. So if you know where they are and you want to picture them and make them really bright, that's also a good idea. So we're going to start with the, in yoga, what they call the crown chakra, or the top of our head. And imagine that you bring light in from the top of your head into your skull. And then down to your forehead. For those of you who do yoga, that's your third eye. And then down to your face, so your eyes, imagine light, healing light, just going down to your face, around your eyes, your nose, your jaws. And you might want to open your mouth and wiggle your jaws, because what happens is very often we tend to hold the tension around our jaws. Making sure that I can't do that because I'm guiding you through, but it's helpful to keep your tongue to the top of the roof of your mouth to really relax. And your ears. And then down to our throat, bringing light into our throat chakra. And then down to the front of our body. So highlighting the 3 chakras we have there. If you can feel any tension anywhere or notice any pain, you might want to linger a little bit longer with that light. And then you're gonna bring the light into your left arm. all the way along your left arm and into your fingers. Releasing any tension through your fingers, and you might want to shake it out if you want to. And then doing the same, going down to the right hand, right arm and right hand and fingers. Again, taking any tension, or strain or pain, and imagining it leaving your body through your hands and your fingers. And then turning our attention to the back. So our shoulders, you might want to lean forward and back and side. Notice if you, like me, tend to carry your tension in your shoulders. Just spend a bit more time there, releasing the tension. And all the way down your spine, imagining all your key organs, your heart, your lungs, your liver, your pancreas, all of your digestive system, your kidneys, all the organs that we completely, we don't think about, we don't care about. We send them light and love and appreciate them for all the amazing work they do to keep us alive. And then down to our coccyx and root chakra. And our hips. And our bum. And then the front of our legs, so our hamstrings, front and back. Our knees. Our shins and calves. Our ankles, and we may want to move our ankles round because this is one part of our body that doesn't get moved very often. And then our feet, the sole of our feet and our toes, you may want to wiggle them. And so what I'd like you to do in your own time is to imagine going again all the way, the light throughout your body, all the way down to your feet. And imagine that you've managed to collect all of the tension anywhere in your body. And when you do that, you just imagine that when you reach to your feet, you just imagine all that tension, everything else drain out through your feet and is kindly absorbed by the earth. And you let that go. And we bring real gratitude for our body, this vehicle. I like to call it, Jack and I call it our spacesuit for human living. Quite like that. Something that as human beings we need to put on to be able to live as a human on planet Earth. And I quite like that. And being grateful for those 37 trillion cells doing their jobs and all our organs. And when you're ready, you can just relax your concentration and bring your attention back into the room. So how did you find that?
I really enjoyed it. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it was amazing.
We pay so little attention to our spacesuits. We just take it for granted. And it's really important because that's what we need to live in a good life. So it's a good practice. And in particular, those of you who do yoga, you can easily integrate it with the practice you do, because a lot of the practice, sort of in terms of imagining, sort of really connecting, also like just clearing up all of your chakras is really helpful as an image, if that works for you, because once you bring that light, you can really just imagine the if you know the colors of each chakra, you can use that as well, and just like really, I like doing that, just seeing each color just suddenly shining even more. That's also a good practice. Anybody struggled with that one? Wonderful. So that's it. It's a good practice. So that's what obviously I recommend you try and do this week. The other thing I'm going to show you then, if you do mindful walking, you can then start integrating, is, so I'm going to need you to stand up to do this so that we can do this little practice. So with the, what I'm going to be teaching you is about mindful walking. I practice mindful walking when I walk the dog. I try to, but you can use it with any form of movement. So it doesn't have to be just mindful walking. It can be brushing, when you brush your teeth, being very present with the movement of your hand. Okay, but what I'm going to teach you is literally, so when we walk, we've learned to walk, right? It's completely automated, so we don't think about it. But what I want you to do is to experience what it feels like to almost unlearn to walk. Okay, so what we're going to do is think about, okay, so what do we do when we want to take a step? What's the first thing we do?
Kind of pull our leg forward.
Yeah, but before that, what happens?
We make a decision to do it.
Yeah, but in fact, if you think before you, so you need to decide which foot you're going to put forward and step forward. But actually, the first thing you do is you shift your weight on the leg that you're not going to move forward. So you shift, then you lift your leg, and then you put it forward. And then you do exactly the same with the other leg. Yeah, you put your weight on that particular leg, shift and forward. Shift, lift, forward. Yeah. So now what I want you to do, I want you to play with that, but I want you to do it with your eyes closed. And do it as slowly as you can. And notice what happens. So what happens when you do it with your eyes closed?
You need to concentrate on the balance more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Legs are more heavy.
Mm.
Can feel your
So all
feet
of that we
adjusting.
absolutely do not think about when we walk now. But when you think about, you know, why it's so hard for like toddlers to first crawl and then stand up, and you know, because they'll need to learn like the balance, all of those things that we've had to learn, right?
Yeah.
So what I would like you to do, if you can, as well as doing your body scan this week, is to practice mindful walking. So when you go walking, what I would like you to do is no music, no audiobook. So I know when I go for a walk, I tend to put my audiobook and listen to that, okay? If you want to practice mindful listening, perfect. But if the exercise of our meditation is the focus of on purpose is walking, we need to remove the headphones and to really focus on walking, okay? And being present with our body. So, you know, walking, you know, really straight. And what you're going to do initially when you walk is sort of say to yourself almost, shift, lift, down, shift, lift, down, okay? So you really focus on those steps. And you can do that at home initially, but then what I would like you to do, or encourage you to do when you're doing your mindful walking, is to be very present with the steps you take. So present in your body, noticing in the same way that you did with the body scan, if there's anything aching, if you're making up story. And the practice is, if you suddenly hear something, okay, so you've shifted the focus of your meditation to sounds, that's fine, but then bring it back to your body, okay? So the exercise is about the walking and the sensation of the body when we're walking. When I'm at work, at the moment, I can't really do that other than when I go in the kitchen to make a drink and come back. But when I'm at work in the office, what I tend to do is I tend to when I go to meetings to really focus on the walking and paying attention to that, because what happens is we naturally as human beings, because this is all automated, we don't think about our body and our walking. And instead, it's almost like head take body to meeting. And we're walking thinking about what we're going to say when we get there, or what just happened with this conversation you've had and whatever. And we're not really present, like I showed you in my picture, with our body here and now. You know, and we're either revisiting the past or going in the future. And what we want to do with this practice is really anchor ourselves in our body. And another really useful tip that you can do first thing in the morning when you wake up is, if you really want to anchor your body in the present moment, is that you literally sort of close your eyes and you imagine your body from your feet like roots growing and going all the way down to the earth, okay? And I quite like imagining that there's a hook, and I can hook the roots that have come down from my feet. So if you try that, you'll see it's like a real anchoring, like a safe feeling. So just imagine that you can grow roots and you can really go down, 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 all the way down to the core of the earth. And you can hook it. And what you're going to do is you're going to bring the energy back from the earth, planet Earth, which is nurturing us and caring for us, holding us, bringing its energy through your feet, all the way to, through your legs, your knees, your hamstrings, your hips, your bum, obviously private parts, and your stomach, all the way to your heart and your shoulders and your back and your throat and your head, and coming back out to the top of your head and going up to connect to whatever the energies are from the top. And for me, the way I do that is I connect it with almost like imagining that there's a little rocket going up and connecting up to the moon. And you can do the same way down. You just bring the energy back from the moon and space and that emptiness, because we are made of the stars and we are made of that emptiness. Most of our molecules are empty. You look in an atom, it's 90% something emptiness. So we bring that energy down through our crown, and the same process through our head, our face, our throat, our shoulders, arms, and that connects back to our heart. And we take a deep breath in and a longer breath out, being really anchored in the present moment in our body. And then when you're ready, you can just relax your concentration, bring your attention back in the room. And that's all I wanted to share with you today. So any comments before? I'm conscious that it's 22, so I don't want to keep you too long.
Can I just check, because then we didn't go